Well, appreciate you staying with us here on Morning Live. Now, the Independent Examinations Board, or the IEB class of 2021, has achieved a 98.39% pass rate in the Matric exams. And this is slightly higher than last year's pass rate of 98.06%. Now, all candidates who passed achieved a pass that is good enough to enter tertiary study at one of the three levels. And the class of 2021 experienced disruptive challenges, and also these were of an unprecedented nature over a period of 2 critical years of their academic careers, and mostly, of course, due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The CEO of the Independent Examinations Board, Anne Oberholzer, joins us now, and we're going to talk about the achievements of the IEB class of 2021. And good to see you again. Welcome to Morning Live.
Thank you so much, Sakina, and good morning to all your listeners.
Firstly, a huge congratulations to the IEB and, of course, to the class of 2021. How do you feel about the achievement?
We are so pleased that these learners have done so well, and I really must congratulate them and their teachers for really doing the hard work necessary in very difficult times to achieve these results.
So, and they are, of course, absolutely commendable, but let's just unpack them slightly. So, starting with the number of candidates that sat for the 2021 Matric exams.
Yeah, we had 12,857 full-time candidates and just over 9,000 part-time candidates. Those are candidates who don't write a full package of 7 subjects. These numbers are slightly up from last year. A steady growth, mainly from growth within the schools, and in some cases a couple of new schools that have joined the IEB.
And as we see, especially with the public schools and those results, there's often a lot of talk about the retention rate and dropouts. And let's just talk to that with regard to IEB, especially considering that we've been dealing with this pandemic now. Has that had a significant impact on the number of candidates?
I'm not sure whether there have been dropouts at schools. From our side, we've seen a steady number of learners coming through. Within the schools themselves, I think the parents and the school management work hard to keep learners interested and sufficiently occupied, if I can put it that way, that they don't drop out. The online teaching, I think, has had an impact in keeping learners on track to an extent. But as with anything new, people have got to get used to it. Some learners have taken to it very well and, in fact, almost thrived, while others found the move to online teaching quite disconcerting. Not seeing their friends except on a computer could possibly have upset them. But generally, I think the efforts made by the schools and the learners to adapt have been very good.
And you quoted as saying, Anne, that COVID-19 has, of course, had a negative impact on last year's exam. And many would ask the question, given the resources that generally are available to learners who actually write the IEB exam, the majority of whom are deemed to have access to technology and connectivity, for example. So talk to us about the impact.
Well, Sakina, I think the first thing I need to say is that the IEB does have a number of schools where learners don't have access in terms of stable internet and so on, and even the equipment to use that. So those teachers have had to work particularly hard to find ways to keep children on track, so to speak. And they've used a variety of methods from literally paper-based distance learning, much like the old UNISA type process, WhatsApp, and so on. Having said that, quite a few have had access to the online teaching. And as with anything, it's new. Teachers have to adapt, and I really must commend the teachers because, well, they're not as old as I am, but they're certainly not of the modern age where you're born with virtually a computer in your hand. And they've had to learn how to deliver lessons in a manner that's very foreign to them. teaching is a very personal profession. And to suddenly have to deal with people through a flat screen is quite an adaptation for them.
So, and with regard to the sort of changes that you've had to make as a result of the pandemic, let's talk about those, because obviously we're still dealing with the pandemic, even though it does seem to be tapering off, but we don't know in terms of mutations what happens from 1 month, 1 day to the next. So just in terms of how you've managed to adapt as the IEB and the sort of changes that you've had to make, and what sort of changes you've implemented to assist these learners.
Yes, from the IEB side, our functioning has remained relatively stable without much change. But I really must acknowledge the school management teams who have had to deal with opening and closing of schools, COVID protocols, and in fact running a Matric exam through the middle of the fourth wave of COVID. They've certainly had to carry a lot of strain and manage the stress of their teachers, their children, their parents, and their, just generally the school as a whole. And certainly we've seen at a number of schools the initiation of wellness classes, if I can put it that way, wellness events, in order to assist learners and teachers particularly to cope with the stresses that the pandemic has forced on them.
So if we look at the numbers, obviously chalk and cheese as compared to the public schooling system, and of course we see now the Department of Basic Education seeking to get all learners back at school full time. This sort of issue, has this one scuppered your plans much as the IEB?
As I say, Sakina, the schools have managed that very well. If they've needed to expand the where the children are sitting because of the social distancing, they've managed to do so. So in terms of getting back to school, we haven't had any issues reported to us. They seem to have all been able to get back to school as normal.
And of course, the new academic year has now started. Anything noteworthy from your side? Because I think you are in the fortunate position with the schools under your umbrella, as it were, and that, they do have resources at their disposal. But was there anything noteworthy at the beginning of the 2022 academic year?
Sakina, I think the one thing that we have learned from the pandemic is that we can no longer ignore technology in education and how it can assist, what the pitfalls are, and how we implement going forward. I think if we've got one good thing coming from the pandemic, it has been the fact that educational technology has catapulted education into the 21st century fairly and squarely. So I think the new year we will start seeing how teachers adapt, how they can lead the way in showing the rest of the educational community how this can be done successfully for the benefit of learners. I'll be the first to say that computers and technology cannot replace a good teacher. But at the same time, it's better than not having a teacher or having an underqualified teacher.
And then I'm just curious if at all any sort of research has been done into this, and you touched on it slightly earlier about the interaction between learners at school and the fact that has been disrupted and they were not able to interact as they traditionally would. But are there learners who actually benefited from this disruption?
Well, definitely. I think the learner who is self-sufficient, can study on their own, doesn't necessarily need a teacher full-time. They need a teacher to refer to when they have a moment or two of doubt. Those kinds of brilliant children who are not necessarily bound up with social events will succeed and will benefit from the online and from working on their own. Whereas there are others who definitely need the teacher, they need their friends, they need the social interaction that helps keep them on track. So, yeah, it's a mixed picture. And I think the research is showing that.
And it's going to be interesting to see again how all of this is translated in terms of learnings from the pandemic and the disruption. But of course, 98.39% pass rate during this pandemic and the disruption. What you're aiming for in this academic year, Anne?
Yeah, Sakina, I would actually be very surprised if we ever had a year of 100%, because there's always the child who has something happen during the exam, something that's disrupted them, put them off track. But yeah, for me, the thing is every child must do their best, and if they can get through, all the very best to them. And those that don't, well, there's always another chance to try again. So
this is true. Well, that's it. Thank you so much for your time this morning. CEO of the Independent Examinations Board, Anne Oberholzer, speaking to us about the Matric results, a 98.39% pass rate for the IEB class of 2021.